Of course, they're servants only in the village. In the castle, they're quite different, and probably wouldn't know me or anybody else here that they've had dealings with in the village. That's quite certain, even if they have sworn 100 times in the stall that they would be delighted to see me again in the castle. Besides, I've already had experience of how little all these promises are worth. But still, that's not the really important thing. It isn't only through the servants themselves that I have a connection with the castle. For apart from that, I hope and trust that what I'm doing is being noticed by someone up there. And the management of the staff of servants is really an extremely important and laborious official function. And that finally, whoever is noticing me may perhaps arrive at a more favorable opinion of me than the others. That he may recognize that I'm fighting for my family and carrying on my father's efforts, no matter in how poor a way. If he should see it like that, perhaps he'll forgive me too for accepting money from the servants and using it for our family. And I've achieved something more yet, which even you, I'm afraid, will blame me for. I learned a great deal from the servants about the ways in which one can get into the castle service without going through the difficult preliminaries of official appointment, lasting sometimes for years. In that case, it's true. One doesn't become an actual official employee, but only a private and semi-official one. One has neither rights nor duties, and the worst is to not have any duties. But one advantage one does have, that one is on the spot. One can watch for favorable opportunities and take advantage of them. One may not be an employee, but by good luck, some work may come one's way. Perhaps no real employee is handy. There's a call, one flies to answer it, and one has become the very thing that one wasn't a minute ago, an employee. Only when is one likely to get a chance like that? Sometimes at once, one has hardly arrived. One has hardly had time to look around before the chance is there. And many a one hasn't even the presence of mind, being quite new to the job, to seize the opportunity. But in another case, one may have to wait for even more years than the official employees. And after being a semi-official servant for so long, one can never be lawfully taken on afterwards as an official employee. So there's enough here to make one pause. But it sinks to nothing when one takes into account that the test for the official appointments is very stringent, and that a member of any doubtful family is turned down in advance. Let us say someone like that goes in for the examination. For years he waits in fear and trembling for the result. From the very first day, everybody asks him in amazement how he could have dared to do anything so wild. But he still goes on hoping. How else could he keep alive? Then after years and years, perhaps as an old man, he learns that he has been rejected, learns that everything is lost and that all his life has been in vain. Here, too, of course, there are exceptions. That's how one is so easily tempted. It happens sometimes that really shady customers are actually appointed. There are officials who, literally in spite of themselves, are attracted by the outlaws. At the entrance examinations, they can't help sniffing the air, smacking their lips and rolling their eyes towards an entrant like that, who seems in some way to be terribly appetizing to them. And they have to stick close to their books of regulations so as to withstand him. Sometimes, however, that doesn't help the entrant to an appointment, but only leads to an endless postponement of the preliminary proceedings, which are never really terminated, but only broken off by the death of the poor man. So, official appointment, no less than the other kind, is full of obvious and concealed difficulties. And before one goes in for anything of the kind, it's highly advisable to weigh everything carefully. Now, we didn't fail to do that, Barnabas and I. Every time that I come back from the Herrenhof, we sat down together and I told the latest news that I had gathered. For days we talked it over, and Barnabas's work lay idle for longer spells than was good for it. And here I may be to blame, in your opinion. I knew quite well that much reliance was not to be put on the servants' stories. I knew that they never had much inclination to tell me things about the castle, that they always changed the subject, and that every word had to be dragged out of them. And then, when they were all started, that they let themselves go, talked nonsense, bragged, tried to surpass one another in inventing improbable lies, so that in the continuous shouting in the dark stalls, one servant beginning where the other left off, it was clear that at best only a few scanty scraps of truth could be picked up. But I repeated everything to Barnabas again, just as I had heard it, though he still had no capacity whatever to distinguish between what was true and what was false, and on account of the family's position was almost famishing to hear all these things, and he drank in everything and burned with eagerness for more.